Okay, we are live. Good afternoon and welcome to Leadership Live at Lunchtime. I'm Rachel Mcelroy from Solutionize Global. I'm in charge of communication and engagement, and I'm here today to talk about the importance of great communication. I'm delighted to welcome three very special guests who are experts in the subject. I've got Joanne Rewcastle from DWP Digital. Joanne, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role?
I will. Thanks, Rachel, and Hayley and Carol as well. So I work in the digital part of Department of Work and Pensions. I look after internal communications for about 3,500 people and external communications across government.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Joanne. Carol, Howley from Panintelligence, can you introduce yourself and what you do, please?
Hi, absolutely. I work obviously for Panintelligence. I'm the VP of Marketing and Communications at Pan. Previously, I used to work at a company called Skyscanner, where I was the head of B2B marketing there. So I look after kind of the full range of all marketing, communications, growth activities at Panintelligence.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Carol. And lastly, but not least, Hayley, can you tell us about yourself and what you do in your role?
Yeah, and thank you everyone as well. So I'm an account manager for Scriba PR. We are a B2B comms agency. We're based in Huddersfield. We're 11 strong, word nerds. We absolutely love B2B communications. We like to sort of simplify complex stories for technical, niche sort of sector businesses to tell their story in the best way through the power of words. And it's all about empowering sort of employees, customers, prospects, and journalists as well to love these brands just as much as we do.
Nice. Thank you so much, Hayley. Thank you, ladies. So, wow, what a year it's been. It's almost a year since we have entered the pandemic situation. So, trauma, change, lack of control, this urgent seeking and needing of answers, being authentic and transparent. When we're in a situation which is very, very stressful, it's natural and part of our internal psychology that we need and seek answers from our leaders. So against this kind of backdrop, why do you think comms is so important? Joanne?
Thanks, Rachel. So for me, for all the reasons that you've just ran through as well, I think that the importance that shone out last year was the trust. There was so much information everywhere, whether it was coming out from government advice, from schools, from organisation. And I think good comms really helped to cut through that for a lot of people, make it easy for them to find a trusted answer and a definitive guide of information that would help them, practical support, but also much more kind of empathetic, emotional support for the situations as well. So for me, a big part of it was around trust.
Yeah, definitely. I think trust is absolutely key. And Carol, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I think I completely obviously agree with everything Joanne said, but it's kind of, I think communication became so much more difficult with everything being online, but it's also so much more nuanced and complicated than just like giving a great speech or talking to people. It's all about, you know, listening and really listening and understanding what everyone's going through, and having sort of empathy with people builds that trust and builds that two-way relationship. So I think that's been such a huge importance in the last year, but also kind of real foundations for great communication going forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're absolutely spot on. Hayley, from a professional perspective, looking at you as a PR professional, how important is communication?
That's good to know that I am a professional. I think firstly, communication has always been vital. I think 2020 has just completely amplified that. And for me, it's about the quality of communications. You know, it's not just sort of sending things out for the sake of it and just hoping that it lands. It's all about getting that brand voice and being able to tell it in the best way possible that answers those customer pain points, which are evolving at a rapid rate. It's about empowering your employees as well. I'm a big advocate of getting your employees involved in terms of getting your communications out there and spreading it far and wide. I bore the team a little bit with a statistic that I have with when it comes to sort of social media, in that employees, if they were to send out the same social post that a company that came from a company post as well. The employees themselves would get like 8 to 12 times the engagement. So it's about leveraging those opportunities with your employees and really building on that value of communications, whether that's media relations or thought leadership or webinars as well. We're seeing that obviously really take off. Sessions like these today, it's just another way of adding that value. But on top of that, like Joanne and Carol have both said as well, in terms of the it's all about the empathy and the understanding and really sort of knowing when and where to send your communications and what's timely and what's relevant.
Yeah, no, definitely, I agree. I think I made a comment a few weeks ago that 2020 was the year that leaders became more human in their communication, and I'd be interested to see what your opinion of that comment is, ladies.
Yeah, for me, definitely. It is. It's all about that understanding. It's again, it comes back to that point of it's from an internal environment outwards as well. So it's you've probably already got these skills anyway as a leader if you're an effective communicator anyway. So it's leveraging those, and it's really sort of speaking to your employees and knowing what customers are speaking about now, what are their pain points, addressing those, and being supportive with your employees and being a leader from the outset, but also filtering that across the team as well. So you've got a band of leaders that are able to communicate between one another, and all that it kind of comes together in terms of you being human, authentic, relatable. I don't know about you, but I really sort of gravitate towards those that are actually able to sort of say, yeah, I probably did make a little bit of a mistake here, but this is how we're rectifying it, and this is how we're making things better for you as the customer, for you as the audience, and you're taking those employees as well with you on the journey.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point that you make about making mistakes, because this whole pandemic situation, there's not a rule book that leaders have been working to. We've not had the answers. It's been difficult. It doesn't really get any more human than being on a video chat in your lounge or in your kitchen, or with the interruptions we talked about before we came on live. We talked about deliveries and interruptions and things like that, and we've all seen, I suppose, a completely different side of each other with our our general sort of day-to-day interactions. Do you think the events from last year will change how leaders communicate in the future, Joanne?
Yes, well, I hope. The reason I say yes, and it's not just optimism, is I can see a lot of leaders that have really probably been pleasantly surprised at the response that they've had when they have been a lot more honest and a lot more open. And some of the things that have happened in the last year have actually been more inclusive. We're all dialing in from our houses and bedrooms, kids, dogs, cats, people at the door. And I think that leaders have possibly seen that they don't have to be the perfect room backdrop where everything is absolutely fine and very corporate. They're just the same as us, working under these circumstances. And I think the reason their behaviour will change is that they've seen that when they do that, actually people are drawn towards them, not pushed away in a way that they might have thought, oh, I'm not coming across very professionally. Actually, no, people have leaned into them and gone, yeah, you're right, you're not, because your kids just walked in on the back of the call, but you know what mine did as well. So that's why I think it'll be different. And the second reason I think the behaviours will change is we've had to deal with such a lot of uncertainty, haven't we? A bit like Hayley was saying about the kind of the honesty in the message. I think they've got more comfortable with communicating through uncertainty when the honest answer is, we don't know. We haven't a clue. We're going to try this and see what happens. And I think the more people do that, it's you get more comfortable with the response that you get as a result of it. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Carol?
Yeah, I think employers and employees have had to really invest time and energy into kind of creating those great lines of communication and building trust and being open and being aware of everyone's kind of, I guess, difficulties and challenges, from, people's kids on calls to animals going crazy at the door and, everything else in between. It's been crazy, but I think it's like really investing that time to kind of worry about the output of people, but also their morale and their rationale and everyone's individual circumstances and how they impact, I think's made everyone more human and more aware and more understanding of each other, which I think's been really, really good. And I don't think will change. And I think employers and employees are really taking time to protect those relationships and that respect that they've built up. And, you've seen it from examples. I think it was way back in 2014, Joe Biden sent that famous letter around his whole staff saying, if I find out you've missed a family occasion because of work, then you won't be in my staff anymore because it's that important. And I think a lot of employers and people are starting to realize that actually they can't sacrifice their life for work, but it's all about making things work for the best way so that you're still enjoying your work, you're productive, and making that kind of transition as an employer and as a leader, I think is hugely important and inspires your staff to deliver really well. And I really hope and do think it will continue going forwards. Yeah,
definitely. Thank you. Hayley, what about you?
Yeah, completely echo everything that everybody said. I think there is certainly room for empathy, even more so than ever before. I think, like the guys have said there, in terms of you understanding what people are going through, I think that's really key in terms of your communications and your strategies and evolving that as well. Not letting things drop just because we're sort of 12 months, 13 months in from lockdown really, and sort of doing as much as you were doing back then, and possibly more now in terms of the mental health side of things. I was speaking to Kirsty Carter, your chief of staff, Rachel, in the respects that she actually makes it almost like a job that you have to get out and you have to go out and go for a walk and recharge and things like that. So it's about that flexibility, and it's about understanding that people have their own experience of this pandemic and everybody's going through stuff, and it's not always great. It's a really emotive topic in terms of what's actually happening around us. You can almost get in a little bit of a bubble, can't you, when you're sort of working all hours God send just to get stuff out, when actually there's all this stuff that's happening outside your front door. So it's just about utilizing those skills that you probably already have, but you're sort of leveraging a lot more now.
Yeah. Thank you, Hayley. I think you touched on some really good points, actually, all of you. We talked about, obviously, the impact on communication and engagement strategies. Mental health, obviously, is a massive, and well-being. Who thought, we would still be working from home and in our third lockdown when this all started, just under a year ago. It's really, really crazy. We obviously need to change and, continually review our communication and engagement strategies as organisations, because there is, a very difficult landscape, and we still don't know quite when we're going to get out of it the other way. So it would be interesting to get your thoughts on just how you think this ongoing pandemic will impact longer term communication and engagement strategies in organisations. Joanne, I'm going to come to you first.
Thanks, Rachel. So how it will impact in the longer term, I think my impression of a lot of our leaders is people are much less once and done, like, oh, here's a really tricky communication thing, let's get that right and then let's move on. I think because the situation has gone on for such a long time and changed while it's gone on, I think there'll be more understanding about a lot of what we do in communications is uncertain and we don't know, and we're going to try some things and really measure it and get some insight and then decide what we're going to do next. So I think that will be sustainable, just because I think the uncertainty is going to continue, and therefore we'll have to keep that strategy in place. And then the other thing I think is we've all talked about it, the focus on well-being, whether that's mental health or just well-being in general, that the priority can't be everybody understands the company's priorities and we're all motivated to deliver it. Actually, the priority is exactly what Carol was saying. Actually, people have to be in a good state, otherwise they're not going to deliver much of anything at all. So I think that will really stay at the top of the agenda. It was always there, but I think it sometimes competed for airtime, but I think it will always be at the top going forward. I hope.
I definitely hope. I mean, we can't go through all of this and not bring some amazing lessons out of, what has been a really difficult situation. I think that's going to be key for leaders to ensure that they bring the best of what we've learned, because there have been positives. There's been loads of positives actually. Bringing those forward into the new ways of working, I think, will be absolutely key. Thank you, Joanne. And Carol, what about you?
Yeah, I obviously completely agree. I think going forward, a lot of other areas of the business have really seen the value of communication and seen how much of an impact it has on their staff, on their teams, not just kind of communicating the plans and processes effectively. It's, opening up that two-way discussion, kind of team building, giving everyone that voice and that ability to contribute, and how much that fosters, innovation and communication between the teams and between people, and how that kind of management then really just starts to filter back into the company. And I think before, we didn't need to make as much effort because it happened naturally in all those interactions and those conversations and things, even in companies that were partially remote, like, for example, before we had 10 global offices. But you did still have, conversation facilitation, but it wasn't quite the same. Whereas now, because everyone's separate and everything is separate, and it was quite a shock, I think, for an awful lot of people. You've got, people have seen the value of factoring that in and how important it is to protect all of that. So I think it's been so much more focused by other people on how important communication and team building and empathy and, management direction, clarity of messaging, it's just all kind of come through, I think, across the whole business. So I think, the value of communication has stood out hugely across companies. So it should keep going forward.
No, I definitely agree. It comes right back down to Joanne's first point, really, about trust. Good communication instills trust in your staff, doesn't it? Hayley, coming to you now.
I completely agree. Again, I think it is a case of leveraging the stuff that you're good at. Playing to your strengths in that respect. But I also think there's an element for your strategies to evolve as well. So not just sort of play on the stuff that's been working just for the sake of it. I think it's about adding value, and it's about understanding those again, like I said earlier, the pain points of what customers are going through now at this moment in time. They're of the moment interested, are completely changing now at a rapid rate. It's a ridiculous rate, really. But so I don't think you should ever let your comm strategies or your engagement strategies stagnate. I think you should always be reviewing them anyway if you're an effective leader. And again, empowering your staff to be able to do the same, to have that voice, and to look at going back to the point of the value side of things. Look at the things that you think, actually, this is what the customers are asking for, so can we develop those? Almost like today, these kind of sessions, these are fantastic for engaging probably a new side of an audience that you've not been able to before, or leveraging the already great value that you give into the customers anyway. So it's just about keep building that up, and maybe parking the stuff that probably isn't right for this moment in time. The not like the hard sell kind of things, the product focused side of things. I know obviously there is a place for that, of course, but I think you've got to understand your marketplace to be able to sort of deliver those kind of communications to your customers and get that buy-in as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're absolutely right. One of the things that came to my mind actually listening to you, the three of you answering, was the power of collaboration. And here we are, the three of us talking, the four of us, obviously three of you, I can count, talking about, the importance of great communication and engagement. And we all obviously work in quite different businesses, across private and public sector, and it struck me really, actually, and I was thinking about it last night, that it feels like collaboration has really come to the fore since we've been in this crisis. We've been searching for answers, we haven't had them, we've lent on the people around us, and it feels like going forward that we're potentially going to be in a much more sort of collaborative space across different organisations. Have any of you got any thoughts on my rambling in that respect? Joanne, you were nodding your head a lot when Hayley was talking. So
Yeah, and also struck by what you were thinking, Rachel, which is we're all in very different industries, but aren't there such like core parallels across the comms role is the comms role, really. It's just the context is different around it, I think, a lot of the time. On the collaboration bit, yes, and because we've learned new ways to collaborate, haven't we? You know, we haven't got those, as I think Carol was saying, those like, I'll bump into you for a coffee, or do you want to just go out, or, oh, there you are in the kitchen, let me have a chat about, I sound like I spend all my time in the kitchen at work, don't I? But, you know, it's those kind of informal conversations. We've lost all of that, or largely. So I think we've learned new ways to have rapport and to collaborate with people, and not just to collaborate, but actually connect with people. I know right at the beginning of this, I found it really hard to know what to post on, like professionally, on Twitter or LinkedIn. I found it I was struggling to read the mood, but also I was a bit worn down by really serious stuff that I was communicating. So I found it really hard to kind of pick myself up. So I had to find other ways to kind of connect with people, so that I stayed like open to collaboration, even if at the time I wasn't physically trying to do any with anybody. It was just like, I'm still here and you're still here, and now we're both okay. So I don't know if anybody else found that. It might just be my experience.
No, I completely agree. We suddenly went from being able to post very effectively and not really thinking too much about what we were posting to you know, reading it over and over and over again, wondering if it was right, if the tone was right, if we were being authentic, if we were being, you know, if we were showing enough empathy, being humble, grateful, all of those kind of things. We've got a question come through from the audience. So, loving this discussion. Thank you very much. Claire, how do we track the effectiveness of communication when there is so much less face-to-face? There we go. Carol, what are your thoughts on the question?
I guess it depends on like the context, whether it's within the company or external to the company and your audiences. So I guess you have to set parameters in a baseline, put all your metrics in that you want to hit, and you know how it impacts. And I think more than anything, especially internal to the company, is to ask for feedback from people, to kind of give your staff that voice, give the people the voice, the opportunity to contribute. And also, you know, with a wider audience, like you should always be listening to your audience, questioning them, getting feedback, making sure you're hitting the right notes, that you're serving them in the best way, and really putting them at the center of your organization's mission. So yeah, it depends on your medium, but obviously being very clear on what success looks like, what you're trying to do, what emotions you're trying to shift, or what kind of, you know, what you're measuring in a sense, and then you can apply your metrics in it. And obviously a lot of PR, as we've moved increasingly online, there's a huge amount of metrics we can track, and loads of opportunities to do that, from all your visitors to your reach to your, you know, your media hits, etc. So yeah, it sort of depends a bit on the medium, but I think for me, especially internal to the company, as we've been discussing a lot today, is just that feedback and opening up those conversation routes to people.
Yeah, definitely. Joanne or Hayley, would you like to add anything else to that question?
I'll let you go, Hayley.
Yeah, like Carol said, I think it's often quite hard to measure, especially in PR. I know you've mentioned the things there, Carol, because when it comes to sort of brand awareness, it's really difficult to sort of pinpoint what that actually means. So that's probably evolved in the respects that it's not necessarily about having, you know, 300 pieces of coverage anymore, or, you know, getting a certain reach or anything like that, but it's about the stuff on top of that as well. So it's, you know, for all those millions of pieces of coverage that you have you landed that real key piece that's got you into the right sort of sectors and the right sort of target markets where they are actually, you know, they're responding to that, and it is creating those lead generation opportunities. So I think it's difficult to measure in that respect, but like Carol says, there are a lot of metrics out there in terms of, you know, your marketing metrics, your KPIs, and that goes not only for the stuff that you're doing as a brand, but also, again, like Carol mentioned, the internal environment as well. So getting feedback from your employees, getting feedback from your customers as well. We're helping brands to run a lot of surveys at the moment as well, and we're getting in terms of collaboration as well, just sort of going back to that point, we're getting brands to help with guides and things like that. We've shameless plug here, but we've just launched a guide ourselves this morning just on the A to Z of communications, and it's all that's kind of bringing everything together, and it's measuring it in that way, really, in terms of what people are saying and where that fits into your brand and the stuff that you should be measuring today, really, in modern day.
Perfect, thank you. That's I shall look forward to reading that guide.
Sorry about that.
I will do. Okay, I've got a couple of I've got some more questions. So have any of you utilised any new channels to communicate en masse since the start of the pandemic? Anyone want to answer this?
For us, we've leveraged Slack from an internal point of view in terms of those communications. We've obviously got more into the kind of webinar style of communications. You know, the visual stuff really works for us. We've been pushing brands to sort of take a step back almost and sort of say, right, how can you best communicate with customers and prospects at this moment in time when there's so much noise out there at this moment in time. So we've been helping them with guides, white papers, and also helping them in terms of scripting sort of webinars and video content as well. That's something that we're able to sort of script for that, but also it gives brands an opportunity to sort of deliver a message in a different way. But not only that, you know, how accessible is that? You know, it's for all your videos. Are you putting captions on your videos, for example? Are you doing those kind of things? Just the small little tweaks that add towards that entire value that you can add to customers that you might not have factored in before, or you might not have felt like you had the time to do before. But if you can sort of take a step back, if that's even possible, take a breath and think, right, this is where we need to sort of speak to our customers on a different level. I think that's where brands are really thriving at the moment.
Yeah, agree. Thank you, Hayley. I've got another question, ladies. Many of your colleagues would have seen you as a beacon of positivity and strength during the pandemic. So how have you maintained momentum? Joanne, this sounds right up your street.
Sounds like somebody in my team who I definitely haven't paid to ask that question. So a beacon of positivity, maintaining momentum. For me, it's back to the well-being point. I think there was a point about sort of 6 weeks, 2 months in, because it was all just full on, wasn't it, for everybody in communications. And there was a point at which I thought, well, this just isn't sustainable at all. The more I thought, how am I going to keep going, and how am I going to keep the team going? And we really started to open up and talk about that a lot more. Not that we weren't, but we kind of made it front and center of everything that we were doing. So it was, our starting position was, if the team's not well, the work won't be well. So that's what helped me, being very honest about it. I wrote a blog about, which I've only done internally, but I might do externally actually. Sometimes I'm not okay, and that's okay. And we always laugh, it kind of broke the internet. It didn't, just a lot of people read it. And it was for me setting out, actually, that this isn't great, and it's not always a good situation, and I'm not always in a good frame of mind. So how can I support you and you support me? And that's what helped me to stay positive. Feeding off other people, even at the time when it's really hard to feed off other people's energy. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely spot on. Carol, is there anything that you would add to that?
I think just a very similar thing. The one thing I observed of a lot of leaders, and that I saw working for myself, was kind of that vulnerability and kind of saying to people, look, you know, this is hard. Like, I understand that you're struggling. It's fine to be struggling. Just, you know, talk about it. Let's all open up. Let's share our experiences. And then you have that kind of great build up and that great morale between your team, just to help you go on, and to have people who know that it's okay to put the hand up and say, look, I can't do this. And they know that it's, you know, everyone understands it's not the problem. It's, you know, how do we solve that? How do we work together? How do we solve this together? So it was a really great, I think, team building exercise. And that's what helped us pull together and everyone stick together in, you know, different pockets and as a wider team as well. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's, I think that's someone's just put on the chat there. Can't wait to read your blog, Joanne, if you want to publish it externally.
I'm going to have to now.
Thank you, Kirsty. Yeah, in fact, there's a few people commenting that they'd like to read it. So that's good. You're going to have to publish it now. I think, as leaders, you guys have hit on the fact that we do have to be very honest and open about how we communicate and make sure that people are aware that they can be honest about how they're feeling. Like, as we said before, there's no rule book. We're in a long-term situation. Everybody's experiences are different. Everyone's home lives are different. And we have to keep really, really, I suppose, pushing that from the top. And I love the title of the blog, Joanne. It's okay to not be okay, because sometimes I'm not, because definitely, as anyone in my team or in the wider company can definitely vouch for, there have been times when I've definitely not been okay, but it's okay. There have been times when the constant interruption of homeschooling and things like that have been very difficult to deal with. But I like to think that we've all kind of grown in this situation and matured and become very mindful of other people, which seems to be a nice thing to come out of this situation. I've got another question actually around COVID-19. So when the COVID-19 hit, did your comms strategy change straight away via your social channels? Is it something that you're still continuing to evolve? Who wants to pick that one? Joanne, because I know you're desperate to talk about crisis comms as well, so I'd love to.
Love a bit of crisis comms. Yes, our comms strategy on social and internally totally changed, particularly working in government. There are times when you need to align your communication strategies around the national kind of priorities and mood and direction. So we stopped doing a lot of stuff externally while we got ourselves in line with what that mood and story was, so that we didn't it's what like tone that you were talking about earlier, Rachel, so that we didn't put something out there that was just totally out of kilter with the tone. So we stopped that, and internally everything was focused around the immediate priorities, which was to keep colleagues informed, help them to understand what it all meant for them and what they needed to do, and to be open and transparent about it as well. And then after sort of very quickly, actually, sort of after a couple of weeks, we started to open up a bit more, because we didn't want to stay silent and we wanted to be able to share what we were doing and be transparent about it. And also being in government, we did an awful lot, like every company did, but our response in government was in response to the crisis. Our department had vastly escalating numbers of users of our services, and so from a tech point of view we had to scale that up very quickly, and so we started to come out and talk about some of the ways that we did that as well, just to sort of share how it happened, really. So a big change, but it's funny, isn't it? I don't think it's ever gone back to normal. Do you know what I mean? I still feel that we're like, is this okay? Is this right? Is this the right thing to be doing? We're still in it, aren't we?
Yeah, we've got to shift almost to long-term thinking when we've been in a very sort of short-term strategic situation, which is going to be quite difficult, really, for sure. Carol, Hayley, what would you add to that?
I guess for me, I wasn't actually working at Panintelligence at the time. I was working at Skyscanner, so obviously there was a huge change for us and a huge impact from the start of lockdowns to closing the offices, but also for us, obviously there were millions and millions of displaced travellers and people all over the world that were struggling with everything from seeing family to getting home to knowing what source of information to trust. So we completely changed everything that we could, and sort of had an emergency team jump in and work on it across marketing and comms. And our big focus and issue was to provide accurate and available information on what was possible, what wasn't, do our best to be up to date, to signpost people, to just help in any way we possibly can, really. And then sort of moved on to kind of providing that empathy and understanding of the travellers and the victims and the people that were really struggling and suffering, and really kind of making sure that we could help as much as possible. So our focus just became solely on how much we could help and resource people. And then sort of slowly as things sort of moved on was, around enabling conversations and sharing love of travel and sharing, opportunities and things. And, it was obviously a difficult point for the company, but the focus on the customers and the people was the biggest thing. And it just kept everyone going and, meant that we felt that we were really providing a good service.
Yeah, no, I think that's very important. And what an industry to work in when a pandemic hits. Wow. Hayley, have you got anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so from a client point of view, we took it on a case by case basis. So every client was different in what they wanted to target, what they thought they should be targeting, what they thought they shouldn't be putting out there. So it was important to have those conversations from the get-go and not just rely on that first conversation and let the communications go as a result. It was, it was constantly sort of keeping in check with the clients, making sure that they were happy with what we were instructing them in terms of where they should be placing their communications, what they should be saying, making things that they were already saying a little bit more relatable in terms of timely stuff, maybe around sort of remote working solutions, cloud, IoT, those kind of things. And home working, obviously, everything in between, really. So from a client perspective, it was very much case by case basis that those conversations are still going on today as well. We're still looking at what's timely, what's relevant, what can we hold back on, what can we leverage more. From an internal point of view, we had, and we continue to, we have a lot of conversations. Our managing director, Katie Mallinson, she's very honest in everything that she's doing for us and doing for brands as well as a business. I think it's quite a testament to, how she's sort of grown Scriba as a whole, and it's that honesty that I think is translated into the communications that we've put out there. So we've made no secret of the fact that when the first lockdown happened, we lost £250,000 almost overnight because brands had to pause, they had to reduce retainers, they had to look elsewhere because fortunately marketing and PR are often sort of seen as a bit of an expense, and it's understandable, it's completely understandable in that respect. And we had to have those meaty conversations with clients and say, yeah, actually, you're right, why don't we pause for now and then sort of see where we're at and see where you guys are at and see how we can do that. Luckily, we've turned that around in terms of profit and things like that. But I think it's because we were so open about that from the get-go. I think people hopefully gravitated towards that and thought, actually, yeah, that's a brand that's going through sort of similar things that we're going through. So I think it's important to keep having those conversations, make it transparent from an internal point of view, have those emotional moments. Like we've all said, it's a really emotive topic. There's a lot at stake here, so it's really important to be open and honest. And what better way to do that than with colleagues and have those meaty, often difficult conversations with clients as well, but ensuring that everybody's doing the best possible job that they can in a pretty awful situation.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Hayley. I think there were so many pertinent points in that, and we've really gone full circle because, authentic, transparent, honest communication, and actually the importance of communication and engagement across all stakeholders. I like to think that nobody that has watched this session or will watch it later will not come away without thinking actually how important communication is, because it's just been clear for me throughout the pandemic, that it is absolutely paramount to make people feel safer and more trusting in their leaders, and and to really know where they're going, and to understand that everybody's in it together as well, I think is really important. So we've completely got through our half an hour. Is there anything that anybody else would like to add in terms of the importance of great comms? Ladies, over to you. Joanne?
So what I would like to add on the importance of great comms is it's about people, by people, for people. I think if you remember that, then you ruthlessly prioritize everything around that, and you'll probably get good outcomes. Might not be bang on what you're looking for, but they'll be pretty close.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely, people centric. Couldn't agree more. And Carol.
Yeah, very much the same thing. But, obviously all communication's a two-way street, and everything you do, from body language to what you say to how you respond to feedback to how you listen to people, is part of communicating. And it's just so important. So it is all about people and the empathy and being authentic, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And finally, Hayley.
Yeah, echo everybody's points. Just be responsive, be human, be authentic and relatable, really. And I think if you get those as part of your comms strategy, then you're not doing such a bad job.
Perfect. I'm ever so grateful, ladies, for you joining me today, and I hope everyone that's watching has enjoyed this session of Leadership Live on communication. Thank you.
Thank you.